Morning, everybody. Wonderful to be here this morning on Palm Sunday and continuing this series on the week running up to the cross, the journey to the cross. For many of us, we come into this week, I try and do this each year. We come into this week, the week between Palm Sunday, which is today, and Easter Sunday, which is next week. Try and remind myself of the story of the crucifixion, Jesus' run up to the cross. So I'll read the Gospels again, I'll read the accounts of it again, I might listen to some podcasts, maybe I'll watch The Passion or something. And the reason I do that is because whether you've heard this for the first time or you've heard it dozens of times, I feel that this story, it's mysterious, it's beautiful, it's powerful, it's like a diamond that you hold it up to the light. And as you twist it, you kind of get bathed in a different reflection of that light. So I would encourage you to do that this week as we come into what's known as Holy Week between Palm Sunday and Easter. And this morning, I don't know if there'll be anything new for you. I hope there is. Maybe it's an old truth that you've forgotten. But let's again kind of gaze at the story of Jesus' run up to the cross. And while I sort my notes out, I've got a quick question for you. Who gets the blame in your household or your office? Off you go. There were some longer answers there. There were some short answers. Me or him. The organisation I worked for got taken over by a bigger organisation. And we were all thinking, hey, more bureaucracy. I don't know if you've been in the situation where someone you work for has been taken over by a bigger, much bigger organisation. Anyway, the new CEO comes in looking well-fed. And we're all thinking the same thing. How much are you getting paid? Because we don't know. We do know it's a lot more than we are. We also know they're about to talk about cuts. You know the situation, don't you? Anyway, so we're not very happy about this. Someone I work with, a colleague, he's a bit more astute than me. And he said, I'm really happy that we've now been taken over by this bigger, faceless organisation. I was like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Our boss used to be down the corridor, and we could chat to them and have a conversation. And now our boss is the other side of the country. How is that a good thing? He said, this is why. He said, because look, let's be honest, we're all going to moan. We all moan. We're all going to moan. We're all going to blame people for problems. But he said the thing at the moment is, deep down, we all quite like our boss. We all know he's down the corridor, and we can have a chat with him. Deep down, we think he's doing a decent job. So it's hard because we really want to moan and blame people for the problems, but really we're blaming him. And that's awkward because he's just there. But he said, now, we can moan as much as we like. We can blame them for our problems because they're this evil, faceless organisation that we'll never see. We can moan all we want. And we don't have to, we can blame them for all our problems. We don't have to come to them face to face. Well, a fair point. Because someone always gets the blame. In Jesus' day, the answer to who's to blame had a very simple answer. It was the Romans. They were always to blame. It was always the Romans' fault. Maybe before then the Greeks, but whoever was in charge, it was always their fault. Picture yourself in Jesus' day that the people would gather, and the Romans were the ones putting all the taxes and oppressing the people and crucifying people and all that kind of stuff. So they blamed the Romans. But despite that, people still had hope that one day they'd be free. So they gather together and they tell these stories of what it would be like if those people over there didn't keep oppressing us. They'd tell stories, they'd sing songs, especially at religious festival times. They would gather together in Jerusalem. And the story we're about to pick up, I want you to imagine this. All the people gathering in Jerusalem, they're gathering in Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover. Now, the Romans, they knew that this could have been a flashpoint. So what the Romans would do is as people were gathering together for religious festivals, talking of stories of hope, singing their songs, believing that maybe one day they'll be free. Well, the Romans would literally send in the cavalry. So they would send in, through the gates of Jerusalem, they would send in these big horses and soldiers They'd have big flags in order to intimidate the people, to make sure everyone knew who was really in charge. Now, I must admit, that would work for me because I'm quite easily intimidated, especially by those three things, actually. I mean, some of you I know like horses. I'm not at ease with a horse. I don't know what it is about them. I've been horse riding twice. You know, I've been horse riding. I've been horse riding twice. Once I got chased by a dog. The other time I've still got the scar. So I'm just put the weapons as well. They put some people, some of you like you're comfortable with guns. I can't do that. I'm just very aware. Horses and also flags. You laugh. Most of you sit up here. The flag's here. The flag's at the front here. Oh yeah, they're tools for worship. I sit at the back with the kids. My daughter does not see a tool for worship. She sees a flag as a weapon of war. It's terrifying. So I think those three things combined together would do their job of absolutely terrifying me. And so the Romans would ride in through the gate with their horses and their weapons and their flags with the aim of intimidating people. And I think, so as reading this, I'm aware that there's a lot of scary stuff out there. And if we're not careful, we can keep looking at that gate. We can keep looking at that gate. We can fix our eyes and our attention on the things that are designed to intimidate us and put us down and hold us back. I've been really inspired by this Practicing the Way course that many of us have done over the last 8 weeks. One of the things it talks about was like, you are being formed. You are becoming someone. You are not a static individual. You are becoming someone. And I would suggest that the person you are becoming is in part dictated by where your attention is drawn to. And if you spend your attention and your time looking at the things that intimidate you and put you down, well, you are going to live a fearful life. And in one gate, the Romans are coming in with their horses and their chariots and their weapons, and they are designed to intimidate. My friends, if you look at that gate too long, you will live in fear. But we read the story that there's another gate. We pick it up in Matthew 21. Imagine the scene, the Romans coming in through this gate in time to intimidate. They bought the donkey and the colt. Matthew 21, verse 7, and they placed their cloaks on them for Jesus to sit on. And while others cut branches from the trees to spread them on the road, the crowds went ahead of him, and those that followed shouted, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. The people crying out for a Savior, Hosanna, won't you save us? I think maybe freedom for a lot of us is kind of a spectrum. We know that tragically there are many people in the earth today who live under physical slavery, but there are many more of us who live under an emotional or a spiritual kind of slavery. And I think it's a bit of a spectrum. For some people, there's that kind of addiction we can't ever break free of. For others, there's just a feeling that we are running out of options. We're running, but we're standing still, that we don't have the options that maybe we would like to. We're crying out, and in that moment, can I encourage you? Look at the other gate. Look at the other gate. Don't spend your time focusing on those things that are going to intimidate you, but instead behold the gate where there's a new king coming in riding on a donkey. And we can echo the voice of the crowds that say, Hosanna, save us, Son of David. We can come to him and turn our back on the things that want to intimidate us. Instead, look upon Jesus, not riding on a horse, but are coming on a donkey, showing us what a new kind of king looks like. And instead say with the crowd, Hosanna, save us, Son of David. And that would be a good place to finish, but I won't for two reasons. One, I've spoken for less time than it took most of you to park. And two, as I was reading the story, I was really inspired by this crowd. They've got all this intimidation and fear factor and things trying to hold them back, and yet still they have the hope and the belief to look upon Jesus and say, Hosanna, Son of David. But I kept reading the story, and it upset me that the same crowd that were chanting, Hosanna, Son of David, we're so happy you're here, Jesus. A week later, they're the same crowd who were shouting, take him away. Crucify him. The same crowd over here that was so keen on this new Messiah, over here are saying, I don't want any part of this Jesus. Crucify him. Get rid of him. I read the story. I was like, what's going on? How can we rectify the fact that there's a crowd here who so quickly change? I was like, well, what are they expecting? I was thinking, well, maybe too often I'm like the crowd, and it's all very well and good when the problems are them over there. Like if you've got a bad boss, I bet sometimes you've just thought, oh God, couldn't you do a bit of that smiting again? And more like a bit Zeus, just like lightning. That feeling of like, when it's their fault over there, we can have that mentality of like, oh God, can't you just kind of get rid of it? Maybe the crowd really wanted Jesus to come in, start killing some Romans. But unfortunately, his kingdom doesn't always match up with my agenda. Sometimes it takes longer than I want it to. Sometimes victory doesn't look how I imagined. Sometimes his kingdom trumps my expectations. And the crowd who were so keen to say, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me, a week later are shouting, crucify him, take him away. I was thinking, what's going on? There's lots of ways of viewing the cross, my friends. People have written lots of books about it. All over the world, people will be preaching about these passages over the next week. There's lots of ways. I'm not saying this is the only way. But I think one way that I'm reading this story is that between the two Sundays, between Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday, Jesus is he's not just dealing with all the problems of people out there, dealing with the stuff people have done to us. Instead, what Jesus is doing in this next week, he is drawing out the evil from everywhere. He's drawing out the evil from them over there, but he's also drawing out the evil from us in here. He's taking the darkness from over there, but he's also pulling out the darkness in our own minds. This is a king bringing a kingdom, not just to quash other people over there who aren't like us. This is a kingdom that's coming that's going to change the way I think. It's going to change the way I behave. This is a king who's coming to deal with darkness by drawing it upon himself. So we pick up the story in Mark chapter 15. Jesus, by now, having arrived in Jerusalem, has been betrayed by one of his best friends. He's been arrested by the religious leaders, and now they want the Romans involved. And so we pick up the story in Mark chapter 15, verse 1. Very early in the morning, the chief priests with the elders, the teachers of the law, and the whole Sanhedrin made their plans. So they bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, who was one of the Roman leaders. "Are you the king of the Jews?" asked Pilate. "You've said so," Jesus replied. The chief priests accused him of many things. So again, Pilate asked, "Aren't you going to answer? See how many things they were accusing you of." But Jesus still made no reply. And Pilate was amazed. Now it was the custom of the festival to release a prisoner whom the people requested. A man called Barabbas was in prison with the insurrectionists who committed murder in the uprising. The crowd came up and asked Pilate to do for them what he usually did. "Do you want me to release you, the king of the Jews?" asked Pilate, knowing it was out of self-interest. The priest had handed Jesus over to him. But the chief priest stirred up the crowd to have Pilate release Barabbas instead. "What shall I do with the one you call king of the Jews?" Pilate asked. "Crucify him," they shouted. "Why, what crime has he committed?" asked Pilate. They shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." Wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. I read this as Jesus drawing out the darkness, not just from those out there, but the darkness from within me. I suppose it was the envy of the religious leaders that killed him. I mean, Jesus, he told the better stories. He drew the bigger crowds. He could turn a packed lunch into food for 5,000 people. No wonder the religious leaders started by looking at him with envious glances that soon turned into real jealous resentment and hatred. Often you read in the Gospels the stories of Jesus, and he does these amazing things, and then at the end it says, and the religious leaders plotted to kill him. Envy will do that. It'll grow like a weed. I'm not on Instagram, but I understand the basic premise. What you do is you get all of your friends to share the highlights of their week, and then you compare their highlights with your normality. And then you get jealous. And I think that's the end of it, really. Actually, it's not the end of it, because some of you don't have enough friends for that. So what you do is you follow rich and famous people and you compare their highlights with your normality, and then you feel even more jealous. Because no matter how good my week has been, there's a good-looking millionaire out there who's had a better week than me. So I can ensure I'm always on a perpetual treadmill of envy and jealousy. And it grows like a weed. Someone did actually give me some really good advice with jealousy. It was like, if you struggle with it, it's like, look, you can't be jealous of one thing and ignore the other thing. That's good advice. You can't be jealous of someone's pay packet and ignore the hours they have to work. Can't be jealous of someone's physique and ignore the protein shakes they have to take. It's a lot of eggs. You can't be jealous of someone's car and ignore the debt. Different ones of these land differently, depending on... You can't be jealous of someone's self-employed flexibility and ignore the pension contributions. No, that one didn't land so well. That's fine. You can't be jealous of someone's wife and ignore the in-laws. That went down the best. Try not to make eye contact with my in-laws. You can't be jealous of this bit and ignore that bit. It was the jealousy of the religious leaders that killed him. It was that envy that grew like a weed, festered in them, and it does that, doesn't it? It wrecks our relationships. It pulls our friendships apart. As we look at them with envy, it was the envy of the religious leaders that killed Jesus. The Roman authorities weren't envious. They were just ruthless. They were just ruthless. They didn't care the price that had to be paid to keep them at the top of society as long as someone else was paying it. And I think it's a reflection of how power can corrupt. It does that, doesn't it? I don't know if any of you have had it, like a boss who's just downright mean for no real reason. Maybe you had a parent who kind of took some kind of sick delight in making you feel small just so they can massage their own ego. Or a teacher who's a bit sadistic, spends their whole time putting the kids down. Power does that, so I think we do have to be careful. Especially if you've been on the receiving end. Sometimes when you get out of that position and then you're in a position of authority, you can repeat the same mistakes that were done to you. Almost like that they should have to suffer because you suffered. Sometimes when we climb the ladder, we're determined to pull the ladder up behind us. Cicero, the Roman philosopher, said, a slave does not desire his own freedom, he desires his own slaves. And I think there's some truth in that. The power corrupts. That as you find yourself elevating yourself up a ladder, you then treat the people that you're meant to care for, not with kindness, but with cruelty, in order to prove some kind of sick point. It was the power trip of the Romans that killed him. Maybe it was the greed of Judas. 30 pieces of silver, enough to rat out his rabbi, backstab his friend. Every man has a price he will willingly accept, even for what he hoped never to sell. It's a good quote, that, isn't it? From the great critique of Western civilization, Pirates of the Caribbean. Greed does that, doesn't it? It drives us. Greed drives us to do ridiculous things. Your marriage could be falling apart. Your kids might have forgotten what you look like, but you're still replying to emails at midnight in the hope of getting that raise. Greed does that. That kind of desire, that push to always have more. My son is old enough to understand fractions and not quite old enough to understand generosity. He can spot the biggest bowl of dessert a mile off. Woe betide you if you attempt to split it evenly and he thinks it's not even, because he will make sure he is getting the biggest bit. And that's kind of annoying in a child, but it's especially pathetic in an adult. That feel that you always need more. How much is enough? The answer is it's never enough. Always just need that little bit more, just that lie. That lie, there's not enough to go around, so I need to take more. I'm told there's enough food in the world. There's enough food in the world. But people still go hungry. It was the greed of Judas which killed Jesus. Maybe it was the laziness of the disciples. If you know the story, Jesus is in Gethsemane and he's like, guys, can you just stay awake 1 hour while I pray? Just stay awake with me 1 hour for some moral support. And what do? They fall asleep. Laziness. I think a better word is one my father-in-law Tony taught me on Friday, which is acedia. Acedia, it's not so much laziness, it's kind of a sloth. Um, it's a straight, maybe not so much that one, more kind of that one. It's a good word. It's not laziness. It's it's an anxiety that stops you doing important things while still doing things that take no effort. So I read an article about it. Jonathan Zecker writes, we get distracted by social media, yet we have a pile of books unread. We keep meaning to go outside, but we never find the time. We are bored, listless, afraid, and uncertain. As I say, it was translated sloth, laziness. It doesn't quite cover it, this acedia, that not just in a kind of I can't be bothered, but more this kind of strange anxiety mixed with an action. Like you're fretting about doing anything, so you end up doing nothing. And what you do is you shirk the important. You shirk the responsibility. Like the disciples, you're unable to put your hand up and say, I'm going to stay awake. Instead, it's easier just to fall asleep. It will demotivate us. It's like running through quicksand. If you feel like that, you're not alone. John Cassian was a 5th century theologian. He said, a mind is seized by this emotion, horrified at where he is, disgusted with his room, does not allow him to stay in his cell or to devote any effort to reading. Maybe it was the acedia that killed Jesus. Maybe it was the hatred of the soldiers. I learned this week who the soldiers were. I mean, not their names, obviously. Probably ended in us. Or maybe they did. So I think I had this view. Of like the Roman soldiers. When you see the stories and like they're portrayed, like the guy with a hand there, like when you see the stories of Romans, they all kind of look a bit, like Romans, like Italian. Like in my mind, the people crucifying Jesus have kind of come over with their like tortoise shell. Did you do that at primary school? They ought to make the tortoise with the little shells. No one did. Fine. It was all in the history books, guys. You had to read them when they're taught anyway. The Romans coming over there with their salads and Caesar and their pasta. They're coming over here. Coming over. And in my mind, it was like they were the ones who were killing Jesus, these kind of Romans, these Italians, these Latins, are coming over here killing Jesus, right? But then I was reading a history book about it, and I was like, well, of course it wasn't. Like the Roman Empire was way too big. There aren't enough people from Rome, right? They can't be sending the Romans all around the world trying to. So what they had to do was they got soldiers from local areas to look after the local areas. But there's a problem in where Jesus spent most of his life. Is that it wasn't under direct Roman rule, okay? So the trouble was the puppet king, Herod, in one area was doing okay, but down the road, the puppet king had done such a bad job, the Romans had taken over direct control. What I'm trying to tell you is that we know where the Roman soldiers came from who were crucifying Jesus. Because they couldn't have come from where there was a puppet king. They had to come from where the Romans had direct rule, but they would have come from the close enough region so they didn't have to ferry them all around the empire. We know the people who crucified Jesus. They weren't Romans. They were Samaritans, which adds an interesting twist. For those of us who know a little bit about the history and how much the Judeans hated the Samaritans and how much the Samaritans hated the Judeans, which is why the Good Samaritan is such a good story. Which makes sense as to why the beatings were quite so brutal. Because they are laced with a racial prejudice. No wonder the Samaritans would have been delighted with a chance to really have a go at flogging a Judean. Maybe it was the hatred of the Samaritans. Maybe it was the prejudice of the Samaritan soldiers that killed Jesus. It does that, doesn't it? Hatred of the people over there. The ones who look a bit like us but not quite like us. We start by calling them idiots in an argument. Then we go on Twitter. No echo chambers and people who agree with us. They're not idiots anymore, they're scum. And then, whoever they are over there, they lose all humanity in our eyes. I've seen it happen. I've seen 2 people whose social media has warped their minds so much that they lost their job because they became dripping with hatred at them over there. The 2 people had 2 different thems, 2 different groups, but they were just so drenched in hatred for people who weren't like them. It will do that to us. Do that hatred of the other. Distrust of people who aren't like us, it will grow. Maybe it was the hate of the Samaritan Jewish soldiers, which killed Jesus. And Jesus stands on the platform between Pilate and the crowd and Barabbas, and he stands there and he takes it. He takes it. As they heap upon him insults, as they shout at him, he takes it and he makes no reply. And Pilate's amazed as he takes it and says nothing. There are dozens of ways of understanding what happens at the cross. One way I'm thinking about here at the moment is this idea that Jesus is like the magnesium sulfate drawing out the poison. You know, when you drop your phone in the sink and they say you have to put it in rice because it's going to draw out the moisture. And the story of Holy Week is almost the story of Jesus drawing out the worst that humanity can offer, drawing out the darkness of all these different elements. And Jesus stands on the platform and he takes it into himself. He's drawing out the evil and exposing it, bringing it into sharp focus. And he takes it upon himself. And my friends, we are not Jesus, we are Barabbas. Barabbas, who's standing there guilty, underneath the chains, bound by the darkness that he thought it was his destiny to follow him. We are Barabbas standing there watching as Jesus takes it upon himself. The darkness that was meant for us, he takes it upon himself and we get to go free. Jesus stands there and he takes all of that darkness, and because it killed him, it doesn't have to kill us. That is the testimony of Barabbas. Because it killed him, it doesn't have to kill us. That envy that drives you to doom scroll for hours, that envy that puts barriers up between your colleagues and your friends and your relationships, that envy that killed him doesn't have to kill you. That ruthlessness, that drive to put others down to elevate yourself, that ruthlessness that killed him doesn't have to kill you. You no longer have to vindicate your own ego by putting others down. You can be free of that because that ruthlessness killed him. It doesn't have to kill you. The greed that drives you to own it all, to have it in every color, to click on every link. That greed that tells you the lie that there's not enough and you need more. That greed killed him. It doesn't have to kill you. The acedia of the disciples causes you to waste hours upon hours shirking from responsibility, not standing up and putting our hands up and say, oh, I'll take that. That acedia killed him, so it doesn't have to kill you. The prejudice of the soldiers that pushes others away, that makes you afraid of people who don't look like you, that fosters mistrust between genders and communities and generations. That prejudice killed Jesus, so it doesn't need to kill you. The cowardice of Peter, the laziness of the disciples, the bloodlust of the crowd. These things killed Jesus, but because they killed him, they don't have to kill you because he has taken it. And he stands on that platform and he takes all the things that were meant for Barabbas. He says, give it to me. And he takes it. And the chains which bound him are placed on him. He takes the shouts of the angry crowd. Those of you who have lived under the anger of others, or under some unseen watchful eye that's always disappointed in you, that is taken by Jesus as he draws it out and takes it upon himself and says, give it to me. Let me tell you that because of what he does, that darkness is no longer your destiny. That he has taken it. The rage and the shame and the envy and the lust and the prejudice and the cowardness and the humiliation and the bitterness, he has taken it so you don't have to, because we are Barabbas and we are free. The name Barabbas means son of man, which I think is interesting. And why does it mean that? Well, because we are all him. We all stand there. And the Son of God takes the place of the Son of Man as the divine empties himself, makes himself obedient to death, even death on a cross, as complete hatred meets perfect love and love triumphs. In this moment, we find our freedom. As Judah Smith puts it, the greatest challenge of Christianity, it's not your devotion or your focus. It's not your will or your determination. The greatest challenge of Christianity is simply believing there could be a God that's this good, that there could be a mercy this scandalous, a love so outrageous that takes upon himself what was meant for us, a God who takes upon himself the darkness of the earth, and takes it upon himself and looks upon us as Barabbas and says, you are free, for while we are still sinners, Christ died for us. Barabbas, he gets a choice. He gets a choice. Enslaved people don't get choices. Free people do. You get to choose what you'll do with this gift. I don't know what happened to Barabbas. I don't know if he went off starting more insurrections or starting churches. I don't know. Don't know what you'll do with yours. There's two things that we can do when we are given a gift that are inappropriate. We can fail to appreciate it, or we can fail to utilize it. I'll give you an example. I wanted to buy my wife some perfume, and I know which one she likes. So I went to the perfume shop, and it's genuinely terrifying. I just didn't know there were that many smells. Like, there's so many. And the woman came over. She could see I was out of my depth. She was like, "What do you want?" I told her the perfume. She pointed me towards the perfume, but like they'd made a mistake. Bless them. It's easily done. They put the decimal point in the wrong place. She misheard. I said, "I want some perfume." She heard, "You want to buy stocks in every rose in the world." I asked if there was anything maybe a little bit more, I don't know, economical. There wasn't. There's two ways you can respond to that gift in the wrong way. One way is to receive that gift and throw it away. And, "Oh, thanks." Where the cost of the gift is not appreciated, or you don't respond according to the cost. That would have been inappropriate, to not respond according to the cost. There's another way that's an inappropriate way to receive the gift, and that's this. "Oh, I am not worthy of this perfume. I will never wear it. It will live on the side." Imagine that. A gift so beautiful, and yet you keep smelling the same way. My friends, we have been given a beautiful gift of freedom. A costly gift. We need to respond according to that cost, with a gratitude and deep thanks that God has taken upon himself the darkness and the sin of the whole world, that we stand not in judgment but in freedom, that we are allowed to go free, that he has borne upon himself the iniquities of us all. It was a costly gift. We must respond accordingly. And don't waste it. Don't leave it on the side. Tell yourself you're not worthy of this freedom and never use it. No. Use the gift. Let it change you. Live differently because of the price he has paid. I don't know what you'll do with your freedom, but I pray you would know that grace is yours, mercy is yours, freedom is yours.